Hi, this is Megan. Today I'm going to be talking about Betsy's Wedding by Maud Hart Lovelace. I really enjoyed this book a lot. I don't think I liked it quite as much as Betsy and the Great World, but I really loved it. I finished reading Betsy and the Great World and I went right into Betsy's Wedding. I didn't wait for the end of July to come. I actually just finished it like on August 2nd or something because I was just like, this is so good. I can't wait wait till the end of August like I normally do, the end of the month, to read the book. So, I am going to start off my video with non-spoilery things. So, I will tell you when I'm going to get into spoilers, but my first couple things that I want to talk about there are no spoilers. So, I want to talk about how World War I plays out in Betsy's Wedding, because the previous book, Betsy and the Great World, ended right as World War I was beginning, and then it continues on. I think it goes up until about 1917 in Betsy's Wedding. So, first of all, World War I changed everything. It changed the world forever. Culture was forever altered by World War I. And it's interesting because at the beginning of Betsy's Wedding, she has this voyage over from England back to the States where she's from, and everything is serious, rushed, and cramped compared with her other voyage, which was leisurely. It was all about holidaying and relaxing and celebrating, and this is all about survival. Let's get back, let's get off the continent, let's get away from Europe, from all the violence that's breaking out. So one thing that was interesting is talking about the Canadians, because I'm Canadian. So whenever Maud Hart Lovelace talks about the Canadians in this book, I perked up, obviously. So Canadians, they joined right away at the beginning of World War I because they were still very connected with Britain, part of the British Empire. So, of course, Canada became a country long before that, in 1867, but they viewed it as a family affair. So they joined the war, and at one point in the book, the Canadians are struck by gas. And it killed many of them. And Betsy it particularly strikes her because she says Canada's close to home, and that could be our boys, that could be our American boys. So yeah, and if you didn't know this, the Canadians in World War I were known by the Germans as stormtroopers because, not like Star Wars, they were stormtroopers before Star Wars had stormtroopers, and it was because they were scary, they were really good soldiers. So, another thing that was interesting was the election between Woodrow Wilson and Hughes. I don't know Hughes' first name, sorry. So Wilson and Hughes, and Woodrow Wilson's whole thing is, his slogan is, he kept us out of the war, and he restricted submarine warfare. So it's interesting because Woodrow Wilson did do a lot of good, and then you read a book like Rilla of Ingleside, which is the last book in the Anne of Green Gables series, and Susan, the housekeeper in this story, she hates Woodrow Wilson because she wants Woodrow Wilson to have the Americans join World War I to help fight, basically. And so she hates his whole peace without victory thing. But oh, sorry, I'm shaking the camera. But peace without victory may have been a good thing, actually, because with the armistice, the Germans were really forced into this surrender, which created a lot of bitterness in a lot of the young men, including one Adolf Hitler. And Adolf Hitler, of course, wasn't actually German. He was Austrian, but he was still, fought on that side and was involved in that. And just the horrible things that were put upon the Germans at the end of World War I really led to World War II. So Woodrow Wilson, peace without victory, that may have been a better way to go. But anyways, I won't speculate too much. I'm not an expert in history. I just am a learner. I enjoy learning and discussing and thinking about these things. So anyways, something that I loved that is a similarity between Betsy's Wedding and Rilla of Ingleside is that both of the families involved in these books, they both have a housekeeper. So we've got Anna in Betsy's Wedding, and we've got Susan in Real Life Ingleside. And both of them are very, like, outspoken, vivacious people. Susan much more so than Anna, but they both say similar things. So Susan says that I should live to see the day when a union government should step foot in my kitchen. And Anna says something similar here. She says, "Meatless. Yes, if the president says so, but he's eating well in the White House." So they're trying to go meatless and wheatless. So it's just funny, these housekeepers who their job is to feed these families, and they can't do it the same way because of restrictions that war is putting on them. In this book, a movie is mentioned, a picture, as they would have called it back then. They mention The Birth of a Nation. And I just want to read a quote here about that film that they say in here. It says, and they're talking about Mr. Bagshaw, a minor character. It says, he had been present at the sensational New York opening 2 or 3 weeks before of a motion picture called The Birth of a Nation. So The Birth of a Nation was partly responsible for the resurgence of the KKK in the States in the early 20th century. It had started to die down, but then when The Birth of a Nation came out glorifying the KKK, glorifying the awful things that they did, there was really a resurgence of that. So it was surprising to see it mentioned in the book here. And in a positive way, too. That was all that was said about it, just that this Mr. Bagshaw said it was an amazing film. And, yeah, I just thought that was interesting. And from the rest of Maud Hart Lovelace's work, it doesn't seem like she is racist. Like the way she treats the Syrian village, the village nearby of all the Syrian immigrants, she really respects them. So, yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. Had to mention that. Okay, another thing that I love about this book is that they are mentioning all these like songs from the turn of the century, from the 1910s. And I had a job last summer where I was working as an actor with like a historical group where we were playing actual people from our local history, and we were from the 1910s. And so I know a lot of these songs from that job. There's By the Sea, which they sing. So it goes, by the sea, by the sea, by the beautiful sea, you and I, oh how happy we'll be. That song's really fun. And then, of course, the famous war song, It's a Long Way to Tipperary. It's a long way to Tipperary. It's a long way to go. It's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know. And then another one. Okay. Oh, that'll be enough for songs for now. I loved it when they talked about the fashion. The dresses are getting shorter. The posture is changing. Okay, there is this great poem that is written that I want to read. Where is it? Let's see here. I love this. Ankles could be seen, for skirts were getting shorter. Girls were standing straighter. The debutante slouch was gone. Minneapolis quoted, chuckling from its popular columnist Q. The joyful news is with us. Let paeans now be sung. The girls again have vertebrae on which their forms are strung. No longer does a figure S come slouching down the street. The girls have got their backbones back instead of in their feet. I love that. I love that poem. And it's so funny. I never knew that the debutante slouch was a thing. I always thought good posture was in. So I thought that was really good. Okay, now we are getting into the spoiler section. So if you don't want spoilers, go away. Tip. She's a German American in World War I. Talk about hard. She is anti-Kaiser. She's like, I wish Germany would get rid of the Kaiser. And I can't imagine how hard that was. I feel like this book probably, maybe didn't get quite into how difficult that would have been. And I love how at the end, her German family, who were 48ers, meaning they left Germany in 1848 because of the Kaiser, a different Kaiser then, of course. But and then at the end, they're all toasting Woodrow Wilson, and of course, they're very against what the Kaiser is doing. So I love that Maud Hart Lovelace shows more than one side. She represents more than one side of the story. Tib's love life. Oh my goodness, all the men think she's so dainty and fragile and empty-headed just because she's blonde, and that would be so frustrating. If you're blonde, tell me, have you experienced this too? Because, my goodness, that would be so irritating. And that's how Rocky treats her, and Rocky drives me crazy. She is well rid of him. Ugh. Yeah, Tib is strong, adventurous, she loves cars. Yeah. And I love how Maud Hart Lovelace didn't anticipate the ending with Tib. She developed what happened with Rocky before it didn't work out. So, now, Tib's romantic war wedding. It was so romantic, such, military flair. It was beautiful and perfect and just what a war wedding should be. If you read Real Love Ingleside, I will always be mentioning this novel whenever I'm talking about World War I. If you read Real Love Ingleside, it has the epitome of an anti-romantic war wedding. So Lucy Maud Montgomery basically took that stereotype of a romantic war wedding and she flipped it around and twisted it, and it's hilarious. There's in the middle of the wedding, the bride's dog has a fit, seizures, and is howling and throwing up, and it's hilarious. The groom is about to go overseas as a soldier, and he is crying and bawling his eyes out, and the best man is looking way happier than he is, and the bride, Miranda's like, well, if you don't want to marry me, you don't have to, even though it's just that the groom is so sad that he's going away. So that is a great scene. I highly recommend reading Rilla of Ingleside, especially as a nice kind of companion about World War I, to go along with Betsy and the Great World and Betsy's wedding. The crowd. Okay, almost the whole crowd has now moved to Minneapolis. We've got Tib, we've got Tacy, we've got Carney, and Cab is still back in Deep Valley with his wife now, and he's like, I miss more, that more of the old crowd isn't here anymore, and I would feel the same way, poor Cab. I kind of miss the whole crowd being in Deep Valley too. And I thought that was so great that Cab gets married to his wife on the same day that Betsy gets married to Joe, and it's oh, that's so sweet. Cab was her first beau, kind of, and they get married on the same day, but to different people. So, yeah. Joe and Betsy, oh my goodness, this beginning is amazing. Their marriage is quick. Betsy gets off the boat and Joe's like, all right, let's get to a ring, we're getting married right now, basically, which was so fun. But in real life, it was almost quicker because they married within 7 months of knowing each other. Delos, who is Joe, went off to war almost immediately, 2 or 3 days after, and then he was gone for, I don't know, a year and a half or something. And then it says in the back of the book that he came back and then they began their happy lives together. And so it's I wonder how the PTSD would have played into that. But it is good to hear that they had a happy marriage. Yeah, everything is so romantic at the beginning, and then it kind of then it goes to the wedding, and then we get the first couple years of their marriage. And I liked that. I thought that the whole book would be building up to their wedding, but I liked that we got to see their first couple years as a married couple. So yeah, and I like what they said about how they're adjusting to each other. She's adjusting to his low moods, he's adjusting to her cooking, they're making allowances for each other, and that's so much of what a good relationship is about. So I thought that was awesome that that's what she talked about was happening. And I love how they wrote stories together, and then they would publish them, and the money that they got for publishing them would pay for a maid. So they're like, oh, Marta got paid for a week by this story, and I just thought that was great. Another thing is how Betsy always makes a list of goals, and in all the other books she's done that, and it never works out. What ends up happening never lives up to her list. And this one, I like how she makes the list and then she just throws it out, and she's like, God, I cannot do this on my own. I need your help with this, because this is hard. Marriage is hard. And so, yeah, I just liked how she just was kind of threw up her hands and was like, all right, God, you're going to have to help me do this, which is so true of life. So, yeah. And then I felt bad for Betsy, because like I can tell she's missing out on that relationship with God. Like going to church is more like a good thing that she does instead of like actually doing it because she wants to have that great close friendship with God. And so, yeah, it just makes me sad that she's missing out on that. So, yeah. Also, I love that Betsy, she has straight hair and I have straight hair and I wish it was curly. I think curly hair is beautiful. But, I love how Jo prefers her hair straight than curly. And she's like, oh my goodness, I've been working so hard to make my hair curly. But Jo likes it straight. So I just think that's awesome. Aunt Ruth. Love Aunt Ruth. I love this. I love like the beginning season when they're in the apartment together. It's so sweet. And it was sad when they had to end that season and you know, have Aunt Ruth move in with them, but it ended up being wonderful. So just like Betsy was sad that season was ending and then was surprised by how wonderful it was living with Aunt Ruth, I felt the same way. I was sad that that was ending, that they weren't going to be living in the apartment anymore and just having the two of them there. But then it was exciting when they bought the house and Aunt Ruth was so wonderful and their change of schedule was actually a really good thing for their writing. So yeah. Let's see here. I love that at the end of the book, Betsy gets Jo's old job and that she's going to be writing, she's going to be employed while he's gone. And I love that it's Jo's old job. And that is actually how how Maud and Delos met. Delos went off to war. Maud came in, took over the job. Her boss went, oh, you might like to meet the young man who used to have this job. They went out, they had dinner at their boss's house. They immediately hit it off. They, went walking for hours and hours and hours afterwards. And 7 months later, they were married. So that was quick. Betsy and Tacy. So the series begins with Betsy and Tacy. So I'm going to finish it talking about Betsy and Tacy. They are wonderful together. I love the cat duet. It comes up again. They're singing it again in this book. And then they go up to the big hill together, and that was like so serendipitous. And then I have to read this quote. Let's see, where is it? So they're talking about Tacy's husband is Harry, and of course Betsy's husband is Jo. It says, Tacy thought Harry could do anything. Betsy thought Jo could do anything. But with the perfect accord which had always characterized their friendship, they agreed that both husbands were supermen and never made comparisons. And I just think that's awesome. Like C.S. Lewis says, comparison is the thief of joy. And so they don't let that thief into their lives. They just love each other and they appreciate each other. So yes, and it's funny because the real Betsy and Tacy, so Maud and Bick, they actually went to Europe together in 1968. So like 13 years after the last Betsy Tacy book came out, they went to Europe together. And I just think that's so sweet. Here they have like, best-selling book series about them, about how they're best friends and about how they had wanted to go to Europe together but never did. And then 13 years later, they went to Europe. So yeah, I thought that was awesome. Anyways, I will now be ending this video. I have loved the Betsy Tacy series. I'm really excited for the these they're not really standalones, but they're like standalones that are connected to the Betsy Tacy series. So I'm really excited to read those. I'm glad it's not over yet. So yeah, until next time, may you all be filled with peace, hope, love, and joy. Take care, everyone. Bye.